Welcome to the Rational Egoist. I'm your host, Michael Liebowitz, and today we have with us the Harold E. Wirth Endowed Chair and Professor of Economics at the College of Business, Loyola University, New Orleans. He's long been associated with the Libertarian movement and is a prolific author of both books and articles, far too many for me to name in this introduction. But Professor Walter Block, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
So you've been involved with the liberty movement. I mean, I'm reading your book now, Defending the Undefended, or Indefensible or Undefendable, and I see it was published the year I was born. So you've been involved a long time. What initially attracted you to the libertarian movement?
It was Ayn Rand. Well, Ayn Rand and Nathaniel Branden. What happened, I went to high school with Bernie Sanders, and he and I were buddies. We were on the track team together. We were teammates, and my views and his views were indistinguishable. He was more into it than I. I was more interested in sports and girls. He was interested in sports and girls and politics. But you just sort of pick it up through the air. I mean, I'm Jewish. I'm from Brooklyn. It'd be amazing if I were anything other than a pinko. So anyway, Ayn Rand came to Brooklyn College, and she came to speak, and I came to convert her to socialism because, socialism was the way to go, and capitalism was evil. You'd have starving children being killed and all that. And at the end of the lecture, they announced that the Ayn Rand Study Club, or whatever they called it at Brooklyn College then, had a lunch in her honor, and anyone could come, even if you disagreed. And I wanted to convert her to socialism. So I went, and there was this long, long table, and at the head of it was Ayn Rand and Nathaniel Branden and Alan Greenspan and Leonard Peikoff and the senior collective, they called it, sort of a half joke, but her lieutenants called them that. And there was no room at that end of the table, so I was relegated to the other end of the table. And I turned to my neighbor and I said, well, capitalism is evil, socialism is great. And he said, well, I don't really know all that much about it, but the people who do are at the other end of the table. And I went and I stuck my head in between Ayn's and Nathan's. And I was maybe 20 years old, maybe Brandon 35, Rand 50, give or take. You talk about me being older than you. I was the kid then. And this was 1963 or 4, something in there. And I said, there's a socialist that wants to debate someone on socialism and capitalism. And they said, who? And I said, me. And Brandon was very nice. He said, look, there's no room at this end of the table. I'll come to the other end of the table and talk to you about this under 2 conditions. 1, you don't allow this conversation to lapse. You continue until we settle it. I'm putting words in his mouth, but that was the gist of it. And 2, you read 2 books that I recommend. One was Economics in One Lesson by Henry Hazlitt, and the other was Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. Well, I couldn't put Atlas Shrugged down. I mean, what is it, 1,200 pages?
It's up there, yeah.
Small print, something like that. And I couldn't put it down. I must have read it in one weekend. And by the way, every 10 years after that, I've read it again. And every time I get something out of it, not only substantive, but inspirational. It's just my favorite novel. And by far. And I went to his house, I went to her house, and after a while, I was converted after a while. I was now a libertarian. I was never into the metaphysics and the epistemology and the aesthetics and this and that and the other, but the economics, boy, did the economics grab me. And I was a libertarian, and that's how I became a libertarian.
A couple things. One, it's interesting to me that you're from Brooklyn. This last Saturday, I went to Brooklyn for the first time in my life. I walked the Brooklyn Bridge from Manhattan, and we went to, I can't remember the name of the pizza place now, but a pizza place over there. And we walked down to the Brooklyn Heights promenade. And what a view. To the right, I had the Brooklyn Bridge. Across was the Manhattan skyline. And to my left, I could see the Statue of Liberty, and it was amazing. You mentioned Economics in One Lesson in Atlas Shrugged, and it's interesting because when I first started studying economics and liberty theory, I ordered a box set from Laissez-Faire Books, and it was like 5 books on liberty, and 2 of the books were economics and one lesson in Atlas Shrugged. And not 15 minutes ago, I lent Atlas Shrugged to a friend of mine who's never read it. so, it's always fascinating to me, the sort of initial introduction that most people have to these ideas. Economics in One Lesson is just such a superb book because it's short and crisp. So at some point, you came under the influence of the late Murray Rothbard. So who would you say is still influencing you in your thinking to this day?
Well, Ayn Rand and Murray Rothbard. My mother and my father, intellectually speaking, so to speak, if I could be poetic about it. Ayn Rand is just a total inspiration. And Murray is magnificent. Murray is Mr. Libertarian, and Murray put together the libertarian movement. And I am a big fan of his. I don't agree with either Ayn Rand or Murray Rothbard on everything. Very few people agree with their parents on everything. I'm sure you and I both disagree with our natural parents on some things.
Sure.
Well, I disagree with Ayn Rand on some things and with Murray on some things, but they're my intellectual parents.
I find the Murray Rothbard thing fascinates me, and I'll tell you why. As part of the libertarian movement, why it fascinates me. I remember reading Man, Economy, and State, some 18 years ago or so. In the introduction, or one of the prefaces, whatever, there was a letter from Murray Rothbard, I think, to the publisher. And he explained that he had been convinced that there can be an objective morality, and he is now an adherent to this Randian philosophy, he said. I also have read the letter that he wrote to Ayn Rand after he read Atlas Shrugged, where he talked about how she, he was just gaga over the book, and he talked about how she introduced him to the natural rights tradition. I've read in Roy Childs where he said without Ayn Rand, there would have been no Murray Rothbard. And then one of Rothbard's students, Jeffrey Tucker, told me that, 3/5 of Rothbard's brain was Ayn Rand. And even as late as 1982, although Rothbard had criticized the inner workings of the objectivist movement, he used the word exoteric, but he said that when she's talking about things in the world, basically, she's right about almost everything. Yet I've read a lot of Rothbard, but I had never read Ethics of Liberty, so I just started it, and it's unmistakable to me that that she influenced him. And this, had I never heard any of the other stuff I just mentioned, I would have recognized it immediately. But he doesn't give her any credit in the book. Like in your book, Defending the Undefendable, I was kind of surprised that one of the people you credited was Ayn Rand. I didn't expect that. But not only
It's true. Why not?
yeah, of course. But not only didn't Rothbard give her credit, but there's so many people that I come across online that are part of the liberty movement that seem unaware that Ayn Rand had any influence on Rothbard. Now, why is that the case? I mean, first, am I right? Is that been your experience as well? And if so, why is that the case? Why are libertarians, some of them at least, so hesitant to credit Ayn Rand?
Well, I mean, she's a generation older than him, give or take 25, 30 years, whatever. And we all stand on the shoulders of people who came before us. Murray stood on Ayn's shoulders, if I can put it that way. I don't mean to insult anyone here. Ayn Rand stood on the shoulders of Aristotle or other people. Sure. We all come from somewhere. We're all helped by our teachers. There was a little dispute, and I think that this is what broke up Ayn and Murray when they accused Murray of plagiarizing Barbara Brandon's MA thesis, I think it was. And then Murray started writing all sorts of things that Barbara Brandon got it from. So there's no reason for it. I mean, they had a split. They were enemies, unfortunately. But so that probably accounts for why he didn't give her as much credit as he might have. I've criticized Murray Rothbard. I must have 15 articles criticizing him, but we never broke. We never. I mean, we disagreed on, I don't know, voluntary slavery and immigration and abortion and important issues. But with my students, and there are students that are standing on my shoulders, I encourage dispute, and I never get angry at students who disagree with me. Sometimes if they write an article attacking me, I'll respond and criticize them, but it'll always be in a friendly way, nothing hitting below the belt or calling them unhinged or crazy or lunatic or anything like that. I don't believe in that way of arguing. I don't think that that's scholarly.
It isn't.
So that would be my explanation for why maybe Murray and other libertarians didn't give her as much credit as they might have otherwise done.
I've got to know if someone that's been so entrenched in the libertarian movement, what are some of your more memorable experiences? I mean, you must have known a lot of the central figures in the movement.
Well, I don't like to brag, but I once shook Ludwig von Mises's hand,
Oh my
and
goodness.
I never washed it. It's a little dirty, but if you shake my hand, you channel Mises. And I once beat Hayek at chess. And
Come on.
yes, yes. And there's even a picture on the web of me playing him. And my way of beating people is say, look over there. And then I grab their queen and then I beat them. No, I'm kidding, of course. Look, I'm 83 years old. I've been in the movement since 1963 or 4, somewhere in there. So obviously, I would have met the previous generation, Israel Kirzner, Ludwig Lochmann, Thomas Oz. You name the people, and I've probably met them if my life overlapped with their life. Roy Childs was a friend of mine. You mentioned him. So it would be no accident. I've been around so long that it would be amazing if I hadn't met many Robert Nozick, a buddy of mine. Well, I wouldn't say a buddy of mine, but I knew him. I interacted with him at Murray's house, and then there was Murray's living room crowd: Leonard Liggio, Ron Hamaway, Ralph Rako, Walter Grinder. I'm sort of the youngest of the previous generation. So I've met a lot of people, and Ron Paul. I should mention Ron Paul. This reminds me of a story. A lot of people say, well, how's the best way to convert people to free enterprise or libertarianism? And I say, well, who are the two most successful people at doing that? Ayn Rand for my generation and Ron Paul probably for your generation. And yet the two of them, their personality is very, very different. I mean, Ron Paul is a sweetie pie. You call Ayn Rand a sweetie pie, she's going to smack you. And I don't mean to insult her or anything, but that wasn't her personality. I mean, she was vivid and vital, and her eyes flashed. But to call her a sweetie pie, no. But Ron Paul was. So I deduce from this that there's no one right way to do it, because these people were almost polar opposites in terms of personality, and they were the two most successful people in converting people to libertarianism. So that would be my conclusion from that episode.
You mentioned so many people that I've read about, and I don't know how much you know about me, but I spent 25 years in prison. That's where I came to these, came across these ideas.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, I was guilty. I deserved it, so I'm okay with it. But
Can I ask what you did?
well, I did a lot, but the primary charge, or the what they call controlling offense, I guess, the one for which I got the longest time, was I had a girlfriend, and she and I broke up, and she had a new boyfriend, and he and I had some disagreements, and I arranged for some of my friends. They broke in the house and they beat him up, and they stabbed him. I was 21 years old at the time. I've done it beyond the scope of what we can do now, but a lot of work to sort of alter my thinking and change myself. And Ayn Rand had a tremendous influence on that.
Well,
And
God bless Ayn Rand, so to speak.
yes, God bless her. But I remember seeing your name, for instance, in the laissez-faire catalogs. And because every month we'd get a laissez-faire books catalog, and we would just go through it, and we would order the books and just devour everything we came across, my friend and I. And since I've gotten out, I've actually had the opportunity through this podcast to interview some of the very people that I read about. Thomas Saz's friend and mentee, Jeffrey Shaler, for instance. I interviewed some Harry Binswanger. I was able to interview, and Jeff Tucker. And it's just an amazing experience when you are allowed to associate with such great thinkers. And like you said, you don't have to agree with everybody. There's plenty of people. I've had Stefan Kinsella on numerous occasions, and he and I debate, and I like him. He's a nice guy. He's very respectful. He doesn't have to agree with me on everything in order for me to like him. And that kind of, well, first it brings me to my next topic, but first I want to get your take, your position, which to me doesn't seem controversial, but in some circles it does, and that's your position on Israel. Well, what's happening in the Gaza right now, not just Israel in general, but the war in Gaza.
Well, Israel versus Hamas might be the way to put that. Well, I believe that Israel is in the right. Israel is fighting a defensive war. Hamas is an offensive war. Sometimes libertarians say that they're anti-war, but that's not right. Libertarians shouldn't be anti-war. We should only be anti-offensive war. We should be pro-defensive war. If somebody attacks you and you fight back and you kick their butt, you're in the right. So I believe that Israel on October 7th and many pogroms before was attacked. The Jews have been attacked pretty much every country's kicked us out. And we're pretty much inoffensive in the sense of, we don't rape, we don't commit crimes, maybe a little white collar crime, but not the usual kind of crime that worry people. So I believe that what they did on October 7th was barbaric and an atrocity, a terrorist activity, genocide. Genocide is when you aim at civilians. If you aim at military, okay, it's a war. It's not nice, but at least it's not genocide. Whereas if you start killing women and children, as they did, there was this music festival, and they started killing people. I think 1,200 people, and then 200 hostages. So what they did was despicable. And Israel has every right to wipe them out. And this idea that we should have peace now and have a treaty and let them rearm and part of their, what is it, their constitution? I think that's not the right word, but
their charter, their founding charter,
founding document is to kill all Jews. Well, how are you going to make peace with people who want to kill all Jews? And they haven't renounced that. And they say there'll be another October 7th. So I think Israel is absolutely right in killing, in hunting down Hamas. Now, Israel gets in trouble with a lot of people because they're killing women and children. Why are they killing women and children? This is collateral damage. It's not that they're directing it at women and children. It's rather that the Hamas puts rocket launchers in the middle of a hospital, in the middle of a mosque, in the middle of a school, in the middle of a residential area. And then they start shooting rockets. And what is Israel supposed to do? Commit suicide? That it's somehow off bounds because you put your rockets in a hospital and you're not allowed to shoot bomb the hospital? What Israel does is they first bomb leaflets. And they say, look, we got to get this hospital. There are rockets coming out of there, and we're going to give you 10 hours to get out, or whatever it is. And then they bomb it. And then public opinion says, oh, Israel is evil. They're bombing hospitals. Well, ordinarily, hospitals are off limits, but not when you got rockets coming out of them. And now the second part, it's sort of a two-part thing. The second part of it is, well, Israel stole land from the Arabs, and the Arabs are just trying to get their land back. I don't buy that because I believe in John Lockean homesteading theory, that the rightful owner of the land is the one who was there first. Well, the Jews have been there, I don't know, 3, 4, 5,000 years, whereas the Islamic started in around 1600. So they're maybe 600. Sorry, so they're maybe 1700 years old compared to 5,000 years or 4,000 years. And the most dramatic instance of this is the Al-Aqsa Mosque, if I'm pronouncing that right, is built on top of the Israel's second temple. Well, if one thing is built on top of the other, which one came first? Obviously, the Jewish one came first. So and that goes for a lot more land than just that little bit of land. So they talk about colonialism, that the Jews are the colonists. No, the Jews were there first. The Islamic people came afterward. So if you believe in libertarian homesteading theory, you believe that there was no stolen land. Now, the only exception to that is in 1948, a lot of Arabs left what was then Palestine, what was soon to become Israel. Some of them left because they just wanted to go on vacation. Some of them left because they were afraid of the war. But a lot of them left, and I don't know the proportions, a lot of them left because the 5 invading armies sent out a message to all of them saying, look, get out, because if you stay there, it's going to be hard for us to slaughter the Jews. It'll be difficult for us to distinguish, so get out. We'll wipe them up, and in 2 weeks, you'll come back. And the history was a little different. But at the very same time, there were about the same number of Jews, about almost 1 million, in Egypt, in Lebanon, in Iraq, and Syria, elsewhere, who were kicked out. And there was no question of traitoring as there would be for these Palestinians. So what might have happened, which would be a little bit more just, is you have a sort of a swap. But no, world opinion doesn't talk about the Jews who were kicked out of the 5 Arab countries. They just talk about the Arabs, many of them who were traitors because they were trying to help the invading armies. We just talk about them. So I think that the case is clear that on the 2 important grounds, namely private property rights and homesteading on the one hand, and defensive fighting on the other, Israel is in the right, Hamas is in the wrong. And yet you go to Harvard and what is it, 35 student groups on October 8th are saying that it's all Israel's fault. And now they just executed 6 hostages, and somehow that's Israel's fault as well. I don't buy it.
I listened to a debate the other night that you had with Dave Smith, and I thought you conducted yourself very well. I thought you did very well in the debate.
Thank you.
I got to tell you that one thing that pissed me off, and look, I'm not an anarchist. I know you're an anarcho-capitalist. He is. I'm not. I'm not a Rothbardian. But I got to tell you, it annoyed the hell out of me when I heard him try to lecture you on what it means to be a Rothbardian and saying, well, that, and it's just like, come on, dude. Like, it just sometimes just have a little respect. Like, even if he disagrees and thinks you're inconsistent on this position, that doesn't negate the fact that you have devoted your entire life to these ideas. And I mean, like, I would say the same thing. Like, I was talking to a friend of mine and I told him if it were a Marxist, who had spent his whole life touting Marxism, and then some young whippersnapper comes along and tells him, "Oh no, you're no Marxist." It's like, come on, just shut up. But it seems like a lot of the issue is now. I studied a lot of libertarian thinking while I was incarcerated, but there was sort of a branch that I never got into. I didn't even really know it existed. It's sort of the Hoppian wing of libertarianism, or the Lou Rockwell wing that branched from Mises, but not really representing fully Mises ideas. But I don't want to get to that. But it seems like there's a strong hint of rationalism within them. And it's like they have this idea of the state, and the state is not, it's just an abstraction. And the state is this evil abstraction, and wherever it comes along, it's evil, and they're all equally evil, and that's it. And they don't pay attention to the actual concretes on the ground. So while I can criticize Israel for plenty, their founding as a semi-socialist state, the religiosity that went into it, there's plenty of stuff. The conscription, all of that are vital. I mean, are valid. I mean. But comparatively speaking, when juxtaposed with Hamas, and not just the Hamas, but the Fatah, the PLO, or the other Arab countries. I mean, Israel at least has sort of the Western tradition. They have some respect for basic rights of, free speech and property rights. You have none of that in the Arab world. And what you were saying to Dave Smith was, look, you have to take these things and compare them. And that's what I'm doing. And what I'm saying is Hamas is the far greater evil. Now, I had called myself a libertarian, even though I'm an objectivist. I also called myself a libertarian for some 20 years. But over this very issue, the drawing of a moral equivalence between Israel and Hamas that I was seeing coming out of these, libertarian influencers, I said, no, I cannot be associated with that because it was just ridiculous. It was palpably absurd to me. Now that
Well,
brings me, oh, you go
let,
ahead. Go ahead.
let me correct you. It's in some cases not moral equivalence. In
Oh,
some
yeah,
cases, in
true.
some cases, they're saying that Israel is worse,
Yes,
which
that's
is,
true.
but don't blame libertarianism on that. This is not the majority libertarian view. Yes, the Mises Institute and people associated with some of the people in the Libertarian Party. Yes, you're right. But then there's other institutions, Reason Foundation, the Cato Institute. There are 50 libertarian think tanks. My assessment, with no official survey or anything, is about halfy-halfy. Half of libertarians, roughly, anywhere from 45 to 55%, are either moral equivalent or Hamas, and half are you're in my view, namely Israel is there's no comparison. One is a civilized institution, and the other is barbaric. But
Yeah.
so I think it's unfair for you to blame all libertarians.
Oh, I don't. I don't blame them. I'm not even close. I have people on from the Cato Institute. I've had people on from Reason Magazine. I read Reason Magazine for years. That was another thing that I saw these guys doing, calling them what was it? Regime libertarians or something. It's like, come on. Michael Rechtenwald, who had been a libertarian for 2 weeks, is going to call Nick Gillespie a regime libertarian. I'm just like, come on, man. Like that's just it's absurd. And I don't know sort of how else to put it. But I lost my train of thought for a second here, but I want to get it back. Oh, in your debate with Dave Smith, there's always this, well, the Jews, they're Israel, they're killing civilians, and he comes up with the analogy about if there was a cop ran into the house, and I thought you did very well with that, saying the two are not equivalent. I thought you did a very good job with that.
Thank you.
And but as a result of this, your stance on this thing, the Hans, I don't know how to pronounce his name. I would say Hoppe, but I heard you say Hoppe. I'm not sure how to pronounce it.
Hoppe is the way he pronounces it. The people in the West call him Hoppy.
Okay, so I read his open letter to you, and I thought it was gross, to be perfectly honest with you, because it wasn't just an intellectual critique. I mean, he said you're genocidal and bloodthirsty. To me, that's just crosses the line so much, beyond intellectual discourse. But these are people that have been your friends for a very long time. The Mises Institute and Hoppe. And I just like, how does that? I don't want to be like a psychologist. How does it feel? But how is that experience for you to be so viciously attacked by people who have been your, you know, allies for so long and friends?
It's very uncomfortable. Tom DiLorenzo was not only a personal friend, but when my daughter was in Baltimore getting her PhD, he was sort of mentoring her. He was a family friend for, I don't know, 30, 35 years. And he also turned on me in a very vicious way. Now, look, I don't mind disagreement. If Hans or Tom or Michael Rechtenwald or any of these other people had the decency to write a nice critique and say, look, Block is wrong on homesteading, Block is wrong on that, fine. And then I would reply and we'd hopefully get closer to the truth. What is it? Thesis, antithesis, antithesis, synthesis. That's the way we learn. But what they did was really nasty, bloodthirsty, unhinged, genocidal. I mean, it's funny because libertarians disagree on a lot of things, on immigration, on abortion, on voluntary slavery, on reparations to grandchildren of slaves for
intellectual property.
intellectual property.
Yeah.
Absolutely, we disagree on many things, and yet there's a lot of light but no heat. But on Israel, all of a sudden, all bets are off. And I used to be, what was it, the senior fellow at the Mises Institute. I'm no longer there. I was invited to give speeches at their seminars. I'm no longer invited. I mean, that's their right if they don't want to associate with me. But look, Ron Paul and Murray Rothbard are opposites on abortion. Ron Paul is pro-life. Murray Rothbard was pro-choice. You can't get too further apart views on that, and yet nobody ever called either one bloodthirsty or a murderer, or said that they weren't really a libertarian. These are the two chief libertarian theorists, I would say. But on Israel, all of a sudden, it's I don't know, all bets are off, and hitting below the belt and kicking below the belt. I mean, I don't feel good about it. I mean, I lost a whole bunch of friends, or people I thought were friends. Maybe they never were friends. I don't know. There are other people, Tom Woods and Bob Murphy, who said, and Stefan Kinsella, who said that they disagreed with me, but they were very polite to me. They didn't break with me. So I can tolerate disagreement very easily, but it's very disappointing to be treated so viciously by people who were friends for not for years, but for decades.
I hate to throw around accusations like, Jew hatred or anti-Semitism, but I don't know. In a lot of cases, not all certainly, but in a lot of these cases, the pure vitriol that comes out of it, like you said, if I'm Ron Paul, for instance, and I think that abortion is murder, so I'm pro-life, and Murray Rothbard says, look, this thing is a parasite on a living host, and she has the right to eject it whenever she wants, then I'm thinking, well, that's murderous. That's a murderous thing. But yet they were able to remain friends. But yet you disagree on Israel, and you're genocidal and bloodthirsty. Do you think anti-Semitism play a role here?
Well, I don't really think this is a puzzle, and I'm unsure. On the one hand, I've been with them for 40 years. They knew I was Jewish
Sure.
day one, and my Judar, you know what Judar is, radar for Jews, or sort of like gaydar. Gay people can tell each other. My Judar is as good as any other Jew's Judar, and I never felt even a scintilla of this. And look, Mises, and it's called the Mises Institute, but it might as well be called the Mises Rothbard Institute in terms of what they do, or maybe even the Rothbard Mises Institute. They were both Jews. So
Sure.
it's really difficult to accuse them of anti-Semitism. Not that anti-Semitism should be against the law. If you want to
No, of
hate
course not.
Jews, you
Yeah.
want to hate blacks, hate gays, as long as you don't initiate any violence against them. So anti-Semitism isn't that bad in the sense that it should be legal. It's not nice, and I don't favor it. But so there's the case against. What's the case in favor? The case in favor is on Israel, a quintessentially Jewish issue. All of a sudden, it comes out. So maybe underneath, what is it, unconsciously?
Sure.
I have another speculation, and that is that for many people, we talk about who's the follower of who. For many people, the two chief followers of Murray Rothbard are me and Hans Hoppe. And maybe Hans didn't like the fact that he wants to share this limelight with me. And one way to make him be the chief follower of Murray would be to have this vicious stab in the back against me. So it's just another hypothesis. It doesn't account for Lou Rockwell or Tom DiLorenzo or Mike Reckenwald or Ryan McMakin or any of these other people, but it's a hypothesis. I don't know if it's true or not. Hans won't speak to me. Tom DiLorenzo won't speak to me. I mean, I had a full head of hair before this happened, and look at me now.
You know, Mike Rechtenwald, he's been on the show. I debated him on he said that reason and faith are compatible. I said they weren't, and we had a debate. I felt I won the debate pretty easily, but he and I subsequently we got into it on social media quite a bit. And I never like I wasn't insulting him or anything, just challenging the claims he would make because he would assert things that were hypotheses as if they were established fact. I can't remember now, but that's what he would do. And I would say, okay, present your evidence. And then he blocked me. And I just thought it was so funny that the guy who wrote Springtime for Snowflakes blocked me because I challenged his viewpoint. I mean, I'm just some guy. I'd been out of prison a year at the time. You want to be president of the United States and you can't handle some guy challenging you on Twitter? Like I thought it was absurd. And I remember when the issue with you happened, and he comes out, I have to agree with Hoppe on this issue. And I'm thinking to myself, dude, you were a communist, you know, whatever, 5 years ago or 10 years ago. Then you were a Democrat. Then you were a communist. Then you were a Trumpster. Now you're a libertarian, and you're going to stick your face in this and tell somebody that they're not libertarian enough. It was just so nutty. And now I remember when I lost my train of thought before, what it was is I frequently hear people, and Dave Smith predominantly says that the Israelis have denied the Palestinians their freedom. My ass, because the Palestinians aren't really interested in freedom. I mean, the Jews could disappear out of the region and you're not going to have the free Arab state over there. That's not what they're interested in. They're interested in implementing Sharia law. They're interested in running their area like they did in 620. I mean, that's just what happens. So there's just it seems just so much make believe that goes on when it comes to these issues. And I really am sorry that you've borne the brunt of this, because I think it was courageous of you to take the stand that you did, but then to just be so viciously attacked rather than just disagreed with is just, it's unforgivable in my view. I mean, obviously everybody's different, but because I heard you say that you didn't stop being their friends, they stopped being yours, you still consider them friends. But from my perspective, I'd say screw them. Like that's just not friends. I mean, to me, this is our first time interacting. You seem like a perfectly nice guy. I know you and I will disagree on all types of philosophy things, politics, but you're a nice guy. I can engage intellectually with you. I don't think you're being intellectually dishonest. So why can't we have a conversation?
By the way, I disagree with you when you say it was courageous. Courageous means I did something that I thought I'd get in trouble with my friends.
Okay.
I never thought I'd get in trouble.
Oh, okay.
It wasn't courageous.
Fair enough.
I mean, I appreciate your
Fair
compliment,
enough.
but it wasn't really courageous, because courageous means you do something that you think is a danger. I didn't think it was a danger. I just thought it was obvious. I mean, I'm against rent control. I'm against minimum wage. I'm in favor of free trade. Not courageous. I didn't think I'd lose any friends over that, and I didn't think I'd lose any friends over this. I was shocked. I'm just trying to apply libertarian theory to areas where it hasn't been applied to. I mean, I've applied it to, privatizing highways and privatizing, I don't know, oceans and rivers and privatizing space. And, I apply it to areas where it hasn't been applied to much. So now I'm applying it to some other area. No big deal. And I was astounded that this would create so much vitriol.
Yeah. I mean, Dave Smith wants to put the military on the border with Mexico. And that's consistent, I guess, with libertarian principles. But saying Israel has the right to use retaliatory force against barbarians, that crosses the line. It's just so hypocritical, in my view. It really is.
I agree.
So, Professor Block, before I let you go, do you have anything you want to add? Anything you didn't get to say or you'd like to say?
No, I'd like to say that you're a great interviewer.
Thank you very much. I
And
appreciate that.
I appreciate having me on your show, and I think that we had a good letting our hair down. Some of us don't have that much hair, and I appreciate being on your show. And I mean, I don't agree with, I know you're a fan of Ayn Rand, as am I. But I'm not an objectivist, and I see some problems with her and her institution. But I have to have a warm spot in my heart for her because she was my intellectual mother. She, along with Nathaniel Brandon, and I'm not going to get into the split between the two.
No,
As
no.
far as I'm concerned, it's sort of like your parents getting a divorce. You feel icky about it. Well, Brandon was also my intellectual father or big brother or whatever. So I have a warm spot in my heart for objectivists and Ayn Rand and Nathaniel Brandon. Without them, I'd be a Bernie Sanders socialist, God help me, so to speak.
All right, Professor, where can people find you?
Well, I'm all over the lot. Just Google me and you'll get tons of stuff. I've written, I don't know, 33 books, 32. I'm not sure. I can't, the number keeps changing. I've written, I don't know, almost 750 academic scholarly journals and referee journals and law reviews. And I don't count how many op-eds I've written. There must be thousands because I'm a workaholic and I keep writing. And right
Excellent.
now I must have written, I don't know, 80 op-eds on Israel. I'm going to gather them together and get another book out of it. So if you want to follow me, also I'm a professor of economics at Loyola University, New Orleans. And if you're in New Orleans, come look me up. Or if you're a high school kid and thinking of a university, think of Loyola University, New Orleans.
Excellent. Professor, thank you so much for taking time to be with us tonight. I really, really appreciate it. It's been great.
Thanks again for having me.
For now, this is the Rational Egoist signing out. Till next time.